Welcome to Comtrade Podcast. Today we are ready to take a deep dive into AI with our very own Martin Molan, who is the Comtrade Vice President of Comtrade AI, actually. Hello and welcome to Comtrade Podcast.
Hello, I'm glad to be here.
So we're starting off with a big bang, right? So we're ready to introduce Comtrade AI to our listeners for the very first time in Comtrade Podcast. Can you tell us more about it? What's the vision of it and what do you do?
So the way I see it, what is the vision of Comtrade AI? When you talk about deploying AI solutions, you really have two options. First is to integrate the solutions and modules and ideas that are already developed and on the market and try to create value that way. The other one is, which is mostly driven by solving really hard and difficult questions, is that you also have to develop your own solutions, your own modules, your own building blocks. We want to be, and we are in that second category. We are solving difficult questions that require us to develop custom-built solutions, custom-built building blocks.
Okay, and then you first started developing AI within Comtrade a couple of years ago when you were a student working with Comtrade Gaming. So it's first been deployed with the Icore platform that's now being used all over the world by largest gaming operators. Can you tell us more about that time and how you developed from that point to where you are today, and how do you deploy AI today?
Yeah, so that solution is machine learning model for anomaly detection and for automatic monitoring. So the idea was that we want to analyze automatically large quantities of data and detect any sort of deviations from that. The challenge, however, there was that we wanted to do that while having lower quality data set for training. So that really required us to come up with a novel anomaly detection algorithm. So that was the story there. Then this was recognized by Comtrade as having potential they recognized me as having a potential role within Comtrade AI, because the vision of Comtrade AI very much fits with what I did at Comtrade Gaming, right? At Comtrade Gaming, we had a difficult problem that required a custom innovative solution, that required a new algorithm, a new machine learning model. Comtrade AI and Comtrade wanted to create a division within Comtrade that would specialize on solving these difficult questions, building new knowledge, new IP, new models. So that was a natural fit. So this was the motivation why I then transferred from Comtrade Gaming to Comtrade AI and focusing on tackling different problems with new solutions.
Okay, so where would you say now that Comtrade AI, in general, it can be deployed? I'm guessing that's not just gaming industry, but you've had a wide variety of industries. Whoever has that data, whether structured or not structured, can use it. So can you tell us more about it?
So in general, we are always interested in tackling difficult problems. So whenever this type of problems may occur, be it, industry telemetry data, unstructured textual data, really complicated and unstructured data lakes, any sort of problem that has a really niche but really difficult problem, we are solving it. So currently we are interested specifically in application on telemetry data for space industry. This is one of the big projects that we are working on, and another one on a completely different sphere consists of building novel and better RAG architectures for unstructured data lakes. So two completely different data modalities, two completely different ends of the spectrum of the AI field, but they have this common denominator of being difficult and requiring novel approaches.
So wide variety of industries.
Exactly.
And then you mentioned the space. So we've seen that you've been, recently you've been to Milan Astronautical Congress. And can you tell us more about that? How are your impressions from the space Congress? And what are some key trends that we can expect from AI in space industry? And actually, how do you deploy AI in space?
I think that it was a really interesting experience, and I think that space is another one of those interesting area of applications, because in reality space, how I see it, is sort of a microcosmos of everything that is happening, on Earth in a wider industry, but in a more constrained environment, right? So you have these canonical questions like image detection, sort of image processing workloads telemetry monitoring, all this sort of stuff, but in a constrained environment because you're limited with the compute, you're limited with thermal emissions, you're limited in power. So this is why space interests us as Comtrade AI so much. Not because we would be particularly interested in space, but because it is an extremely constrained environment where you have to deploy AI. And we at Comtrade AI firmly believe that constraints and restrictions always breed innovation. This is why we're interested to
Amazing.
be there.
So Comtrade AI has been present in many industries, whether from scientific data, you work with more commercial side. So what do you prefer, AI on Earth or AI in space?
Well, I think that to really deliver value, you have to have a combination of both. So specifically, this was our entry into space industry. We had a lot of experience with with increasing availability and anomaly detection on the for instance, industrial telemetry data. This was our area of expertise, with also scientific innovation, and this was why we were contacted with ESA and their partners to work with them on their project. But the point is, AI has to start on Earth when you are manufacturing a specific part. If you send a bad part to space, there is no amount of AI that will be able to save this mistake, right? So you have to know what you're sending into space. But when the best part is sent into space, AI can help you squeeze more out of it. More lifetime, more availability, more processing, or more workload executed.
So the way you explain it, Comtrade AI within the space agency project has been used on the hardware and the software side, both of them. So can you tell us more about it? What's the technology behind it? How do you specifically use Comtrade AI in this specific project?
So the specific project is about increasing the availability of cryocoolers for the IR imaging modules in satellites. So the idea is very simple, right? You are manufacturing a bunch of different coolers, and you have these coolers for many different applications. You're using it, for instance, in cars, for thermal imaging for drones, and so on. But, of course, if you're sending it into space, you have to pick out of thousands and tens of thousands that you produce, you have to pick one which is the very best. And this is, of course, a very difficult problem to do. You have to do that in a data-driven way. And, of course, because this is such a niche problem, you cannot just call an API to a pre-trained model that will be able to solve this problem for you. You have to look at the data and you have to develop your own custom model. So this is the first level of application. Then, of course, we're also interested to ask ourselves the question, okay, once you've sent this part into space and combined with other sort of really lightweight telemetry that you have, can we increase the usable lifespan of these parts, and can we increase the availability of the satellites once it's already in space? But this is, of course, a little bit longer term goal that we have with our partners with ESA.
Okay, now when you're talking about the goals, can you tell us what are your ambitions and goals for 2025 when it comes to Comtrade AI in general?
Right, so I have really only one wish and only one ambition when it comes to Comtrade AI. We are fortunate enough, also combined with our amazing pre-sales and sales teams, that we have a lot of opportunities. Companies do recognize our value and they do come to us with their difficult problems. So we are very fortunate on that front. What is the greatest ambition for us is to expand our team. So when now in AI, people often talk about this, loss of scaling and that the importance of scaling and accumulation of resources, but people also often overfit on this from the hardware perspective. But of course, having access to high performance hardware is important, but I think that it is the smaller part of the picture. I think that now in 2025 and onwards, the main battle, it's not going to be accumulation of hardware, and it's not going to be scaling of hardware, but it's going to be accumulation of talent, right? So this is going to be the next big battleground for not just us, but all AI companies. So this really is our main ambition and our main challenge, to be able to attract the very best talent. And of course, we do believe we have a very promising proposition because, of course, having difficult problems, having constraints, having these really challenging questions attracts the most driven, most ambitious, most competent people. So, I mean, you cannot have one without the other. If you consider yourself to be really ambitious and you want to progress fast in the AI space and you want to try your skills in the most difficult problems there are, look us up.
Then tell me, how do you attract talent? I mean, probably it's the amazing projects that you work on and amazing innovative technologies, but what are the key values when it comes to attracting talent, and vice versa? What do you look for when it comes to searching for the top talent?
Right. I mean, my perspective has always been, and I might be naive in thinking that, but I always think that the people that we are interested in will always be attracted by the challenge, right? So we don't really have any sort of, our value proposition for the promising engineers is just, and it might sound paradoxical, but our value proposition truly is that the job at Comtrade AI will be infinitely harder than pretty much every other IT job that you might have, for instance, in Serbia or, in the region, right? So one might say, okay, if the value proposition is that it's just going to be harder, why would that work for you? But I truly believe that, the type of people that we are interested in, the type of, competent, ambitious, driven people will find this as an opportunity.
You look for the challenge, right?
Exactly. Because, always the rewards and the scaling and the growth of the company is always related to the challenge, right?
Yeah.
If you don't solve difficult problems, if you don't have challenges, there is no room for growth. And also true value is always delivered just by solving difficult questions. The value that you deliver by simple integration is always limited, and it will always eventually fall flat.
Okay, and then for the very last question, can you tell us more about the future of AI? What are some key trends that we're going to see, not just in 2025, but in the projection of the next, let's say, 5 years? How do you see AI developing?
The development of AI still is somewhat unclear. There are many different visions, many different perspectives that are competing. Of course, I think the big question is what will happen, how long the scaling of these, not just language models, but how far the scaling of these large models will continue, what will be the benefits of that. But also the other development that I'm really interested in are the competing architectures for the world models and for the artificial cognitions, because there are a lot of researchers that do believe that LLMs are somewhat of an off-ramp in the path towards artificial intelligence. I do believe that in the next 5 years we are not going to have this artificial general intelligence. I think that the role of artificial intelligence engineer will be still very much alive and well, even in 5, and not just in 5, even in 10 years. But if I go back to my previous point, I also believe that now the main differentiating factor between different companies has been, in large part, access to large-scale training hardware. I think that this is going to be this sort of access to hardware and compute power as a differentiating factor. I think is going to reduce somewhat. I think that instead of hardware, I think that the main differentiating factor is going to become access to talent. So I think really in the next 5 years, this is going to be the next big battleground, right? So how can you get the very best engineers?
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your perspective and very detailed answer, not just about Comtrade AI, that's very new to our listeners and our audience, but also about the major trends that's going to shape the AI landscape in the future. And we're looking forward to hearing more from you probably in March when you have your PhD thesis. So we're going to see you then. And thank you very much once more for your time to do the Comtrade podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.